Good morning, everyone. Thank y'all for coming. Like you said, I'm Jeremy Heffner. I'm with women's basketball at Baylor.
Good morning, I'm Charlie Melton, Baylor men's basketball strength and conditioning. We're going to start off with a couple of intro slides, talk about where we've been, what we think, and we're going to try to wrap it all up hopefully in about 40 minutes and leave room for questions. If you guys at any time want to say something or ask something, feel free. I know it normally doesn't go down like that, but if you want to raise a hand, everybody except Rudy Thomas can ask questions. So we're ready.
You got the clicker. Thank yous, you got to put that out there. I learned that from Alvar Mill the first time I saw him speak at the CSCCa. We thank God. We're from Baylor University. We're a Baptist university, and we're proud of it. Great to be here. Within Baylor University, you got Scott Drew and the men's basketball staff, Kim Mulkey and her basketball staff for hiring us and letting us do what we do.
Yeah, thankful for Scott Drew taking a chance on me when I had no basketball experience, and I was over at Florida State doing that thing. Thankful for the opportunity to pray with our players before lifts, after lifts, before practice, after practice. And really thankful for Coach Mulkey backing me up every day. Everybody knows what kind of power she has in the field. She's really super supportive. Definitely the guys we train. I learned a long time ago you can win games with athletes, and really good athletes make a decent strength coach or an average strength coach like me look like a better strength coach, and I'm thankful for that.
Amen to that.
Dr. Chuck Stiggins and the CSCCa crew, Michelle, has been sending us emails and keeping us on track, so we're thankful for that because we are a product of basketball, which is absolutely no organization whatsoever.
Chaos. Want to say thank you to all our mentors. Most of them have been here this week. Just the lessons we've been taught throughout our career, just grateful. Thank you to all of you for coming. We appreciate y'all being here. Hopefully we can give you something worthwhile.
All right, so we're going to start off talking about our journeys. But Jeremy and I have tried to decide how we're going to go slide by slide, and this is something he put together. We put it together, but
yeah, we want to talk about how we were trained. I mean, most of us had the same experiences coming up as interns, GAs. We want to talk a little bit about that. We want to talk about who we train. I mean, that's why everybody's here. It's a different animal. It's a different animal. Then we want to talk about how and why we train them the way that we do. We have a reason for everything that we do, like most of y'all do, and we think they're pretty good reasons. And then maybe we're going to go through a couple scenarios just to kind of give you an idea of what our life is like on a day-to-day basis.
This is Dueling basketball strength coaches, and I just want to say on the front end, I'm a much better strength coach than Jeremy. I know more than he does, and so hopefully that'll come out in this presentation.
That's the first jab. Here we go. Here we go.
Some people have been asking for blood during this thing, so we may rip the mics off later and go at it. I'm not sure. It's probably going to be a hippie love fest, though. Jeremy and I get along really, really well. I'm thankful to have him in the room to rebound ideas. I've got 3 beautiful children that always ask about Coach Jeremy, and part of my journey that I just want to start off and recognize my father, Ronald Melton. He passed away in 2006. I'm the oldest of 4 boys, and I explain to people sometimes that being a strength coach is like being a big brother, where I've got to relate to my players, but I've got to keep them on track, and we've got to have fun at the same time. And I learned all that from my dad. He's my hero. He was hit by a train on the job. He's an old school tough guy, train car mechanic, and iron sharpens iron definitely defines him. He stayed sharp in order to sharpen me and my 3 brothers up, and I think that's something important in my life for my sons and my athletes and colleagues. I've been at 3 big schools, Memphis, FSU, and Baylor. I've learned from a lot of different people, from Todd Stroud to Dave Van Hallinger, Dave Plettle, John Jost, Dr. Andy Fries at Kansas, Dr. Kreider at A&M. These are people that got me on the path. And the way the progression went for me was at Memphis. I got at my academic knowledge, my training knowledge, progressions, progressive overload templates. Florida State is when I started to go more practical, my first full-time job, my teams. And since coming to Baylor, it's been a blessing to go from 4 and 5 teams to 1 team. And that's where I really started to refine what I know and refine what I do a little bit to meet the needs of the kids.
This is one of my favorite favorite quotes, take the path with heart. It always gives you the right answer, no matter what the question is. My journey started, I tried to play a little baseball, first of all, and then that didn't work out so well, so I joined the Army because I thought that was the right thing to do. That was kind of my heritage. That's what my family did. I got to learn a lot in the Army about myself, about pushing the limits, about service, about discipline, integrity, and that's where my path started. Everything I've done since then has been based on that foundation. Then after getting out of the Army, I had the opportunity to be a graduate strength coach at University of Texas. And it's like an all-star cast when you're talking about who worked there when I was there. From Mad Dog to Coach Donnie Mabe, who's in the audience, which I'm pretty proud about that. He came to see me talk, so that's pretty cool. Angel, Spazov, I could probably name about 20 more. I'm just grateful for that experience and what it taught me. And it started my philosophy. That's where I started to learn. They had horses. Horses. They taught me how to treat them. They taught me how to train them. They taught me how to care for them. Then I got to go to the University of Georgia, and I got to learn from another great strength coach, Katrin Koch. She was is the director of Olympic sports, and she kind of nurtured me. She nurtured our staff. Mike Schweigert, who's in the room as well, him and I just kind of grew up together. We made a whole lot of mistakes together and got to learn a lot from each other. But that's where I started to become a coach. Rather than just learning, I started to do the things I was taught. Then we get to Baylor, and my life got turned upside down. I'm working with basketball now, and it was a different animal. And I came in it with this mentality that you'll soon find out changed very quickly. I've been so blessed to work with Charlie, Coach Roof. Here goes the hippie love fest. But it's been it's been a blessing. I learned from a basketball guy and showed me the ropes, and then I was ready to rock and roll. So this is where we're at right now. Just kind of talking about where we came from, classical training. We're going to show you some things that you're probably not going to agree with, but it's where our position has led us. And I guess this slide is really just here to show you that we came from the same place as you did. UT football, horses. When I was there, Cedric Benson, Roy Williams, Cedric Griffin, Michael Huff, Aaron Ross. These guys, they're what we're in the business for. And then with baseball, I got to learn from Lance Hooten, who learned from Dan Paff. I got to learn from Lance Sewell, who is my #1 mentor, and he learned from Gambetta. These are giants in the field, and I got to be a part of what they were doing and learn how they do it. And then I went to Georgia, and these numbers on here aren't to impress anybody because I know that they don't, but I'm going to show you some stuff. I just want you to know that I like lifting heavy. I believe in it. I believe that it works. I believe in training in a traditional manner if the opportunity presents itself. On my last team at Georgia, I had 5 500-pound deadlifters. I had over 5 guys jump 36 inches on a baseball team. So I do believe in traditional methods when the athletes are ready for them.
Classical training background, Florida State football, what a great place, what a great school, great legacy. I got there in 2000. They were defending the national championship. That just blew my mind coming from the University of Memphis to Florida State. It was just night and day. And we had Corey Simon coming out of there at 290, jumping 36 inches. We had 12 500-pound benchers with Coach Van. 31 NFL players came out of my time there, and it's amazing the things those guys can recover from within an afternoon versus what some other people can. FSU track and field was a really cool opportunity when I got hired full-time. That's when I started having to write programs for pure sport athletes, and you're writing up to about 7 different workouts, and within each workout, you've got 2 or 3 individuals. And you're writing programs 16 weeks at a time, 8 weeks at a time, mini peaks, unload weeks, competition weeks, train through competitions. And it's what helped me kind of master undulating periodization, linear periodization, conjugate method, all these different styles, and use them to fit different level kids. We had 2 guys throwing a shot put about 68 feet. That's pretty good. I'll talk about them later, but one guy benched about 450, the other guy benched about 300. And all of a sudden I'm starting to think, wow, so I thought you had to bench a lot to throw the shot put a long ways. And it started to open my eyes up. That being said, both of these guys were decent squatters. Dorian was full squat 550, which isn't going to set any powerlifting world records by any means. but it's a decent squat. However, I had 2 national champion triple jumpers with femurs about this long and torsos about this long, like grasshoppers. And when you got them in a squat position, their knees were so far over their toes they couldn't see their shoes. And we had low back issues, so we had to find a way to apply force to the ground that fit that person. And hopefully we're going to talk about some of the things we've learned here as it applies today for our teams.
All right, so this is who we train. We train the basketball athlete. These are some things that we know about the basketball athlete. Accumulated fatigue. These guys and girls play they're in AAU basketball year-round from the time they're 12, 13. And they don't use a lot of the methods that we use to recover and train during that time. They typically don't like to train because they've never trained, so you get them at the age of 18 all beat up, and they've never seen a barbell, never touched a dumbbell, never thrown a medicine ball. You know, basketball can be played year-round. It's an indoor court sport. They get on the court almost every day. They like it. That's what they do. With all this being said, we all know that it's difficult to improve in a state of fatigue, and this is something that you have to consider when you train the basketball athlete. I mean, it is probably my #1 priority. I have to know their level of readiness when they walk in the room. And then, so having said that, what I get out of training is injury reduction. That's my #1 priority. I know I cannot prevent injury, but I know that I can increase their movement reserve, and I can give them a better chance to be out there every day, to practice hard and play hard.
I've got similar experiences, similar concerns as Jeremy. It's the same sport. One thing that was a little bit different for me was this basketball summer rule change. And just a brief rundown on that. Last year, the NCAA gave coaches 2 hours a week to train basketball throughout the summer. Prior to that, it was me. And that gave us the liberty to do anything we wanted in terms of the schedule. 3 days, 4 day, 5 day, 3 day weekends when they needed it. We could train in the morning, train in the afternoon. And now we are dealing with coaches again, and that sometimes is not so much physical as it is mental and emotional to get the kids away from the coaches. We're going to talk about this a little bit more, but basketball in season is basically October 15th to about Easter, which is a long, long time. Once we hit the 20-hour mark in October, we maybe get in preseason 3 hours, 4 hours set aside for strength and conditioning. The rest is all basketball. In the summer, on top of that, we've got a lift, we've got coaches, we've got voluntary shooting with a manager, and then they play pickup for 2 or 3 hours, 3-4 days a week. So fatigue is huge for me. Some of these guys hate to train. All they grew up doing was rolling a ball out on the court. I've had some really good kids. Fred Ellis came in, and he knew what triple extension was. He knew how to snatch and clean with great technique. I've got another guy you see a slide of, Rico Gathers. He's about 275, all muscle, DN looking kid. Lifted weights maybe his senior year in high school, and that revolved around bench press and curls. And so you're trying to teach this kid. And a huge thing for us in basketball, being a change of direction sport like all of us, but we tend to drive left or right dominant. If I can balance unilateral imbalances in my kids, we're automatically better and healthier just because we balance out the leg strength, arm strength. But that's kind of a look at who we're training, and I know we're all training athletes, but when we talk about training basketball, or any athlete for that matter, this is a great way to look at it. This is coming from Mel Siff, one of the best minds in strength and conditioning. And you look at this relationship between what we always think of, speed and strength, and we train that in the weight room all the time, force velocity curve stuff. Speed and flexibility is a huge one. And this relationship between strength and endurance, this whole thing is interrelated. Then you throw in this other parameter of skill, and how do we develop skill under fatigue, skill power under fatigue, skill strength under fatigue. And it's a huge matrix of concerns, but it has to be taken into account if we're going to get the right program for the kids. One thing that I want to bring across in this presentation is to train with purpose. We're not just coming in the weight room taking an off day. We're coming in the weight room taking a day of recovery. We are doing a light day in order to get ready for a heavy day. We're getting a heavy day, and we're going to balance it with a light day. We are coming in every day with intent and purpose. It's not just pulling a workout out of a hat every day. A lot of times what we do with men's basketball at Baylor is really reactive based on the parameters dictated by the coach that day or the game. And we read this from Mel Siff, we read this from everybody, but I really like the way the Bible sums it up. This is 2,000 years ago, and it talks about training with purpose, not running aimlessly, not beating the air. And one thing hopefully we can do is have everybody come out of here with some new thoughts, some new ideas, some new ways to go, because we know the more knowledge we have, the better. And purposeful training is something that's really important to me.
You know, a big thing, if any of you guys know me, my big thing is be creative. That doesn't mean that I use a lot of tricks. I think Coach Johnny Parker yesterday said, don't get strong before you get exotic. So trust me, be creative does not mean that. It does not mean get exotic. Find ways to allow your athletes to learn how to be strong. Strength is a foundation for everything that he just put up on that previous slide. And that's my number one goal, resiliency through strength. And then I want to avoid deteriorating the attributes that they already possess. I'm talking about basketball skills. That's what they came to do. That's what they came to play. I need to make sure that I don't do anything to affect those skills on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and then from a long-term development standpoint. And this may be different than what some people believe in, but success for me is the only thing that I want to see in the weight room. I don't believe in failure in the weight room. I find a way for them to be successful. I use exercises as a tool to get an output, and success is the only way to do that. I don't like to see failure, so I find a way to make them successful in the weight room.
Same with us. We've got some kids that can do the NBA 185 rep test for about 25 reps. We've got some kids that can barely do push-ups. We've got some kids that can't do pull-ups at all. We've got some guys that can do 25 pull-ups. And I'm always trying to figure out, is 1 rep max training appropriate for our guys? Do we need to take 2 months out of the summer, which is the only time we really have available, and 1 rep max them? We do a lot of 3RM stuff, 5RM stuff, and estimate a max so that we're really effective when we're training from 70 to 90% of that load with some other stuff we do. A lot of my guys do not have the skills to get underneath a load that heavy without multiple spotters. Sometimes we don't have the time.
And looking at it from my perspective, I mean, if his guys aren't ready for 1 rep training, 1 rep max training, what are my females ready to do? And so that's something we talk about a lot. I gave a presentation at our state clinic last year called Redefining Strength. And that's something I've had to do. I came in with that classical philosophy of I need to get a rep max and I need to get percentages. And that's how I'm going to train. And that's something that through discussion with Charlie here, I've kind of pulled away from. We'll get into it, but there's different ways that I've determined
Most definitely.
to test strength.
I've learned a lot from Jeremy watching that. And one of the things we both use a ton, and we'll talk about it later, is progression and regression. If we're trying to apply force to the ground, there's a number of ways to do that that are appropriate and inappropriate. And we're balancing the same things everybody else in the room is balancing: injury, coaches, time. And we'll be purposeful about that and creative all the time. Brief sketch here.
Yeah, just kind of giving you an idea of the seasons. I know y'all know this, but we both have been in the postseason the last, 4 years? A long time in the postseason. And it makes it for a really, really long season. You have to deal with physical and mental, emotional fatigue.
Yeah, we've got a little time here in May that we're off. A lot of time we're encouraging our guys to take time off, and they're going to Houston to these NBA quote-unquote experts and blowing their knees up so that they're pulled from summer ball like we had a guy last year do. We've got another guy coming back right now that was going to go to the league, and he just got 6 sutures in his labrum. So downtime is huge for us. When we come off of a postseason run, that's balancing about 6 months of high-intensity work with inadequate rest and sleep most of the time, and we need to unload them. Sometimes that falls on deaf ears.
So we're finally getting into our philosophy. We're about to get rolling. We're at 20 minutes, so
we got
to get to the meat and potatoes so y'all get something out of this. When we set out to do this presentation, we thought we were going to be dueling, but then we said, let's just put 5 points on the board. Let's see where we're at. Let's see what our philosophy is about. And then we looked at them, and our philosophies turned out to be the same. So we decided to change it to a dual perspective. We're training the same athlete in the same facility with different genders. How do we do it? How do we do it? So my number one tenet is do no harm. They have to be able to practice. They have to be able to play. That dictates a lot of what I do. I believe in mastery. I don't use a lot of exercise variation, which goes against the grain sometimes, but I want them to understand what they're doing and how they do it and why they're doing it. And I want them to do it the way that I intend for them to do it. So we have to master these basic human movements so that we can express all of these physical qualities that we want. Strength as a skill is a big tenet for me. We practice all the time. We practice being strong. And then minimal effective dosage. I do just enough to show progression, and that's really all I need to see every day. And then this is Gambetta's term, planned performance training. Everybody asks me what kind of periodization scheme I use. I have a plan. That's my periodization scheme. I have a general plan, and then I work with what I'm given on a daily basis.
My points mirror Jeremy's. They're just said a lot better and more eloquently. So we'll get into that on this next slide. Okay, first one, do no harm. I'm calling it injury reduction. Same thing Jeremy's already brought up.
You got to assess them, you got to test them. What does that mean? It means different things to different people, but the main thing is you have to observe them. You have to know how they're doing it, why they're doing it, what's going on with their bodies, what's going on with their attitudes. These are the tests, just general tests that I use. FMS, I think most of you are familiar with it. I'm not a diehard FMS guy, but I love it because it taught me how to observe movement. It gave me a foundation for discussion. Nate Brookerson right here is pretty much giving me a full, we sat out there for 30 minutes and I had to go take an aspirin after he got done talking about the FMS because my head hurt so bad. But then I go broad jump, vertical jump, approach vert. It shows me a couple things, are they strong, are they explosive, are they a one-leg jumper, two-leg jumper, talking about unilateral balance. I get back into that when I test those things so I can see, what I'm dealing with right off the bat. Push-up test for me, we all know what the push-up test is, but for me it's a mental test. It's a 1-minute test. And when I have women quitting 5 seconds in, it kind of lets me know a little bit about their mental makeup as a freshman, and it lets me know where I need to start at. I observe warm-up daily, and barbell complex is a big thing for both of us, and I've kind of stolen this from Charlie and Mike from the Bulls when he was with Coach Vermeil. It's a great tool for assessment.
Yeah, same thing for us, assess and test and observe. One thing we do at Baylor to make it visual for the coaching staff and the players is run through the NBA battery of tests every summer and then take that year's draft class and their numbers and insert our guys where they fall according to that test against the NBA rookies, give that to the coaches. And every year we rank really high on vertical jump. We had a couple guys at our place touch 12'3", or one guy touched 12'3". The best in the NBA last year was 12'1.5". We can jump out of the gym, but the coaches get hyped on that, and I'm telling them that's great, but we've got to be a little bit stronger. We've got to gain some weight. This is just a tool to understand better. We've got all these NBA tests that we use, but we've got maybe 1 or 2 guys that'll make the NBA. Some of those guys will make it and get bumped straight to the D-League. But of course, everybody on your team is going to the league, right? And all of their entourage is tweeting them every day that they're going to make it. Athletic movement screen versus an FMS. There's some stuff out recently. Megan Young sent that around, and it's something I agree with. FMS, sometimes I'm not smart enough to figure out the FMS and apply the corrective exercises. But what I do every day is an athletic movement screen, AKA dynamic flex and movement warm-up. When I'm with these guys, I know what their normal gait is. I know when their gait is changed. I know what they look like when they lunge and when they're overcompensating. I know what they look like when they're supposed to do an inchworm push-up and their shoulders hurting them. And I can watch every day and make minor adjustments to the lift or tell the coach what's going on or talk to the trainer about the healing process based off of this athletic movement screen, which is still going to accomplish assessing the athlete. Movement warm-up for us involves a lot of low-level plyos to get ready for the big plyometric training session we call basketball practice. In this presentation, you're not going to hear me talk about one-leg bounds or depth drops, jumps, or any of that stuff because we get enough reps, in my humble opinion, of basketball practice. We barbell complex to warm up, to test, to prep for Olympic movements, and it's something we use almost every day. Old school Javorek barbell with a couple of tweaks every now and then. Talking about mastery and pedagogy is point number 2, mastering a skill or the teaching of a skill. The old school educational way to talk about it is tell, show, and do. One thing I've heard said at this conference, and some of the old school guys talk about, is we have to train. I don't know how strength coaches can be effective if they're not in the weight room lifting themselves. I get a number of young kids that want to come intern, and you ask them to go show an RDL or a hang clean, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what shoulders in front of the bar means. They don't know how to teach something from the top down to the floor up. But they can bench, and they can stretch, and that's not helping me at all. One thing that's really important is to do the exercises with my athletes. They may be doing a lot more weight than me sometimes. That's great most of the time. But if I'm under a relatively heavy load, 80, 90% of my max, and I'm showing them what it looks like when I struggle and how I set my body for it, it helps them feel it. We do a lot of regression and progression to meet freshmen where they're at on their skill set. If the whole room is hitting snatches from my vet crew, I've got freshmen over here doing RDL shrugs or maybe a barbell high pull all summer after the complex. We progress them as they're ready.
Like we talked about, mastery, you want those basic human movements. The last one in there, locomote, ambulate, and I got that from Todd Wright. I love his stuff, but we want them to do it efficiently, not just do it. We want to make sure we're stressing the tissues the way that they were intended to be stressed and developing the neurological patterns we need to. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's from a RKC guy, strong first guy now, but in those simple, beautiful movements, I remembered what was really important in training, that consistency trumps intensity all the time, that intensity is born from consistency, that one cannot force it, one has to lay and wait for it patiently, instinctively, and calmly. Be ready to grab it when grace lays it down in front of you. I know it's just a quote, but it's something that's really set the tone for how I train my athletes. We remain consistent, and when I see an opportunity, then I'm ready to push them. But until I see that opportunity, I just stay with the program and stay with what I'm doing.
All right, in the common interest of mastery and pedagogy, we decided to lay out for each of these areas we all train, upper body push, upper body pull, lower body push or squat, lower body pull or hinge, and then torso movements. What is one of the big movements we're trying to get our kids to, and then what's one of the regressions off of that? And we saw a pretty unique trend, I think. Not unique, but it makes sense when we looked across our slides.
And that's, as we continue to get into the force velocity curve stuff, like this, if you'll notice, I mean, this is essentially a progression from the women to the men. The bear crawl RKC plank, we won't go through all of them, but I just like to talk about that a little bit because I think with female athletes we have a lot of tough time with push-ups, and that is just a foundational exercise for me. I don't want to put them on a bench if they can't do a push-up. Well, the most progress I've made with that is actually teaching the bear crawl properly. I think of it as a moving plank, and the RKC plank where we teach max tension and breathing over the brace and that kind of stuff. It's helped me make a lot of progress with push-ups so I can get them to bench press, because if you can't do a push-up properly, I'm not going to allow you to bench press.
Yeah, with looking down here at Olympic lifting, one thing I found on my hinge that's different than some of the programs I've talked to is that we snatch them, we don't clean them. And some people say, aren't you worried about shoulders? I've got some other concerns on cleans with wrists and long forearms and some different flexibility issues. Snatch has been really successful for us. We will barbell complex them for 6 to 8 weeks before we snatch the freshmen, so that by the time they get that grip at the right level, the snatch goes really smooth. But we regress off of that snatch, and there are days when we kettlebell swing like Jeremy to warm up for a snatch, trap bar deadlift them, barbell high pull them. We use it when it's appropriate. And not going to beat this one to death, but a huge thing for me is all the torso stuff we do. We do a lot of heavy torso training within the workout. I'm not a guy that's going to have the whole group up front counting up reps on abs at the end of a workout. I superset my ab work in between sets. So as we do a barbell complex with a 20-kilo bar, a 30-kilo set, a 40-kilo set, the guy's putting the bar down and going right into barbell sit-ups, so 20, 30, and 40 kilos with that barbell complex. We've got a bunch of other stuff that we use for torso training.
Strength is a skill. That's a Pavel quote. I love it. If it's important, do it every day. I love that too. Generally, that comes within our warm-ups, and that's something that we both really believe in, is hammering those patterns in the warm-up as a regression for the lift. And then my blue pad warm-up, we'll get to that here in the next slide or two, but it's something that I do 3 times a week in season, no matter what. I have to get those 3 warm-ups in because it allows me to maintain a certain load on the athletes. This blue pad warm-up, there'll be a table here in the next couple slides, but throughout conference, about 10 to 12 weeks, we overhead press 30,000 pounds, we squat 25,000 pounds, and hinged 80,000 pounds. And this is just from my warm-up, so, and pre-practice warm-up.
Strength is a skill for us. We do dynamic flexibility every single session. We may do it before we get in the weight room. We may superset dynamic flexibility with barbell complex to warm up one day in the weight room. We've got a ton of movements we do, from all the old school toe pulls and squat pivots all the way to a bunch of crawling progressions. And we work on multiple contraction styles for each exercise or movement. We're going to show you a little bit about force velocity curve. It's something I talk about all the time. But we put a squat on the force velocity curve all the way from heavy and slow to unloaded and extremely ballistic. But we want to learn how to contract with these basic 5 areas we're talking about. Real briefly, we're in the red zone on time. You should have seen the conversations we had for the last few weeks. We talk for 3 hours and get 1 slide done. Mel Siff again, talking about this interrelationship between strength and speed, which we all talk about in the weight room with sets and reps, but then appreciating that speed endurance and strength endurance curve. Every athlete, every sport is at a different spot on this, but they all matter, and they all affect each other. We're going to talk briefly about some gender differences on force velocity curve. Men's basketball in general is producing higher levels of force at the same relative speed. And
this sets the tone for me. We talk about rate of force development. Well, I have to get them strong first. I got to get them strong before I start worrying too much about rate of force development. And I need to get my curve closer to him. So that's why we use my regression up to the point where he starts his regression. Generally, that's how it works out.
We laid this out to try to get a sporting concept of why we train the force velocity curve. Is it relevant outside the weight room? We think it is. When we're at a point where the load is above maximal and we're into negative movement and we aren't able to resist that force, that's when we run the risk of PCL, MCL, ACL damage. That's why we need to load the knee really, really heavy in order to offset that. This is a
talking point for us. I mean, this is something that we always talk about, where's this game played at? And Charlie's a big force velocity curve. I thought I understood it until I started working with him, and he kind of has blown my mind with everything that he does with the contraction speeds. But I should move on.
Yeah, we keep on cracking. One thing we found in the weight room, real cool day, if you got some tendos, Kaiser stuff, whatever you have nowadays to measure rate of speed, we had our guys squat, bench squat with a pause until they were under 0.8 meters per second. And you find this with your kids with positional differences in football, event differences in track and field, every sport really, but 2 guys for me that score points and help us win games are starters. AJ just left. He was at 80-ish% of his max going 0.8 meters per second. Really, really explosive kid. He was maxing about 200 kilos off of a bench squat, which is decent for a 185, 5'11", 6-foot guy. Brady, 0.8 meters per second at about 40 or 50% of his max. We want to train for optimal power, but it's different for each kid.
I won't read this quote if you guys get a chance to take a look at it, but it just, minimal effective dosage, to just really put it into perspective for me. This is a world-class coach, and this is what he's doing.
And we start with this same concept with minimal effective dosage. Jeremy's calling it minimal effective dosage. I'm just calling it specific adaptation to impose demand.
I'm real big on, I call it massaging the organism. I don't know if that's the proper term or not, but I like to do things that the athletes don't get on a regular basis. So I work around what they spend the majority of their time in. They do a lot of plyos in practice. They work glycolysis in practice. So I train outside of that zone. I train around that zone to build the athlete as a whole. apply the proper stress at the proper time for the proper duration. That's a big thing for me. And taking that into account, you have to account for nutrition and sleep. I'm not going to give you our nutrition philosophy. I'm just saying, I know no matter what I tell my athletes, they're not eating and they're not sleeping. I have to take into account for that. It doesn't matter what I want to do or don't want to do. If I put an improper stress on them and it leaves them underprepared for practice or a game, then that's my fault.
7'1", 215 pounds. That's our nutrition philosophy. We're working on that one. We've got really something that's aggravating to me as a coach is when I'm in the weight room, I know that a heavy day is preceded or followed by a lighter day. I get ready for that. Basketball coaches think that a heavy practice is something you can do every day, twice a day. When I tell them we need a light day, they think I mean take a day off and play Xbox, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in terms now where I can talk to them, why don't we go half court today to 3 points and stop for teaching pointers, but really be cerebral today and learn, and then tomorrow let's go 5-on-5 with some kind of scrimmage, and let's just blow them out. But we have to include all the stress as strength coaches, and a lot of times I'm the release valve, and I'm the one backing off in order to maintain the health and optimal performance of the athletes. That's something I've had to learn.
Plan performance training, these are just the things we have to work with. We've already been over most of it. For me, the two I really want to mention, offensive and defensive strategies. We had this really tall female athlete this year, 6'8", 7'4", wingspan, and she's gone now. So our whole scheme on everything that we do is about to change, and that's going to be a big thing for how we train this off season. And then ACL prevention, a lot of people ask me about that, so I just will address it really briefly. I don't do a ton of plyos. We spend a lot of time getting strong, a lot of time working on asymmetries, and when they're strong enough and symmetrical enough, then we start doing very low-level plyos. I actually took from Lance Hooten and Dan Paff called Jump Rudiment. It's something that I believe in, and it's just teaching them kinesthetic awareness, how to control their body, and so I don't do a ton of plyos because we're just not ready for them.
We all have different seasons of different time lengths in collegiate sport. So as I've gotten older and as I've gone through basketball, I've been there since 2005, like they said, so I'm learning what coach is going to do. I know what his tendencies are. I've got a couple of go-to things in season, so when I've got a workout plan that he just completely cancels, I can go to something else that's going to work because it's worked in the past. So we're always making weekly adjustments, but even bigger are daily adjustments. Find out from the trainer 10 minutes before the lift that this one guy can't do upper body at all today, and then coach is giving you, instead of 40 minutes, he'll say, hey, today you got 22 minutes. And I don't know why it's not 25 or 20, but it's 22, and that's what he gave me. That fits their little timeline to log all of our hours, apparently. We do a lot of conjugated stuff. We're training for speed and strength and power all at the same time. Everything's undulating, heavy week, light week. We're not in fixed linear progressions. Sometimes in the next couple months, we'll do some linear cycles through the month of June, month of July. But to plan all that, this is a term we're using called chaos, which is basically, if you've had any experience with men's or women's basketball, it's basically daily chaos. And every day we have to fill in the blanks on this chart. We know that it's important to get these qualities, and we know that if we're talking about specific adaptation to impose demand, there is a benefit from going heavy and slow. Proven, tried and true. There's a benefit from going lighter and faster. We've got to get those in during the season, during the day.
No, I mean, and that's something Charlie's been real big on, and we're sitting in the office and he's drawing up his scheme on the board, and I'm like, hey, that's what I do. That's what I do. So it's a real simple template, but when you're given on the spot, as y'all know, demands, when you have 2 seconds to react and you got a room full of 15 athletes, like you got to have a secondary plan.
All right, what we decided to do on this last deal, and we're pretty much at stop time if we're going to answer questions. Maybe we'll do this a little bit different, but this is a scenario for myself in what would I do.
Yeah, so he has, I talk to him every day, so I know this happens all the time. 8 a.m. lift, plan on getting an hour lift in, it's a leg day. coach calls them at 10 o'clock the night before, says, hey, we're going to cancel the lift. You got 20 minutes before practice to get this thing done. And I've seen it happen 100 times, and then I just watch him go.
So we reschedule it. Coach gives me a 30-minute lift before practice, which is his favorite thing to do. After an hour of brutal film where we tell everybody how terrible they are, and then I've got to warm them up and get them lifted and get them out of the gym. This is kind of what I had planned. It's a nice little deal. It works. Movement warm-up, hop skips, low-level plyos to get them going, do a little potentiation, all that fun big word stuff. We're going to go in the weight room, barbell complex, med ball complex, dynamic flex, superset them. 3 groups of 4, no rest breaks, chew it up real quick. That's going to take us 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to hang snatch them. 10 by 2 at 70, superset it with some pull-ups. We'll go 8 by 3 at 60 on a little one-chain dynamic effort deal. Superset some speed ladder. It looks great. It works for our kids really well. This is what we end up with. Barbell complex and dynamic flex in the weight room. Skip foam roll, skip movement warm-up. They're about to go dribble a ball. We can take it that day and not jog, skip, shuffle. We'll glute ham them to kind of get a little hinge movement going. One-arm dumbbell snatch superset, so we get a little bit bigger load on those hammies. And we finish with a 5 by 2 at 50% bench squat because we still want to move that direction, but we got to get on the floor. Jeremy's deal, conference road game in 2 days. He's got a beautiful lift set up where he knows that he's going to have to get in there after practice, have some time. What's happened, though, is Coach is pissed about getting crushed on the O boards the night before. She goes way longer than she should at practice. The girls are dragging into the weight room. 3 or 4 of them have asked for gummies because they haven't eaten since breakfast, and breakfast was a donut most likely or a bag of Skittles. And then this workout turns into all the coaches are pissed in the weight room watching Jeremy go, and she gives him 10 minutes to train.
Yeah, as we're walking into the weight room, Jeremy, you got 10 minutes. We were going to bench, we were going to heavy swing, get some mobilizations in. We're going to variation of deadlift, one-arm cable row, again, some rocking, and then our little cool-down series. And, of course, I don't have time for that in 10 minutes. I'm going to get somebody hurt if I try to get through even A. But what I do know is, well, this is what we end up doing. I got time. I got 10 minutes on the clock. We're on the minute. Everything we do is on the minute. I always have my secondary scenario set up. I don't actually bench in the off season. I overhead press and we work on push-ups. But I do like to bench heavy in season. It's something that my athletes enjoy. So I try to give it to them at a time when they hate the weight room. And so that long workout turned into this 10-minute workout where I'm working upper body and lower body mobility. And I have 10 minutes, so I just have to do the best that I can. But I'm comfortable doing that because I told you guys about the blue pad warm-up. This is what my blue pad warm-up looks like. I do it 3 days a week. We'll come in, we'll mobilize, we'll activate, and then the stabilize is going to usually be a pressing or a crawling motion. We have tons of kettlebells. We have about 40 kettlebells in the weight room. So I do tons of overhead kettlebell pressing. We go half kneeling, we go tall kneeling, we go standing. And I'm a big fan of it. I like to do it before practice. It gets their minds right. Again, strength is a skill, so we're working on it every day. And it gets them in a position to where they can concentrate and focus when they get on the court. So how this would read, you would only have 3 exercises and stabilize, 1 exercise per of the last 3 groups. And I progress them throughout the season, obviously, pull back during conference a little bit. But the reps are low. I mean, I'm doing 3 sets of 5 half kneeling presses on each arm. I'm doing 3 sets of 5 goblet or goblet split squats. Swings, I get a little bit higher rep range. It's what I call express. We're trying to loosen everything up so we can express that power. I'm a big fan of swings. Even if they do it wrong, they're still getting some core stabilization and some eccentric load on those hamstrings, and I love that for ACL prevention. I thought I had another slide, but no.
Well, this is where we'll duel it out. I'm going to let you know that if it wasn't for me, we wouldn't have clean towels in the weight room ever.
I don't like doing towels.
I've stolen a lot of good things from Jeremy. The first day I walked in and saw him deadlifting barefoot, I was like, what just happened to my nice little weight room? Who is this Austin dude in here? Now I'm quite often seen in my little electric socks walking around with kettlebells, enjoying my barefoot dynamic flex stuff.
And then he blew my mind one day. One thing we hadn't talked about is all the surgeries we've had from lifting, but he's like, you know what, man, sub-max training over the long haul trumps max effort training every time. And I'm just like, whoa, why didn't you tell me that 3 surgeries ago? And that's been my favorite thing about him, and that led to what I do in that blue pad warm-up. It's something that I live by and die by. The chaos adjustments, man, watching this guy last summer during the new rule, it blew my mind. He was still getting work done, but he was keeping the athletes fresh and ready to go. And that's something that carried over to this end season for me.
Bunch of crawling stuff from Jeremy. We used to do Spider-Man's inchworm push-ups. Now we're doing all kind of bear crawl, crab walk progressions, reptilian crawl stuff. It's great for my poor old shoulder that's still recovering from some surgery. And weight room warm-up, that goes along with the sub-max training, some Dan John stuff, easy strength, where if I'm going to warm the team up, some days when I've got 20 minutes, I might chop them, cable pull through, dynamic flex, and med ball toss them. And that'll substitute for a movement warm-up and a dynamic flex, but I'm sneaking in a little bitty lift, and got a lot of that from Coach.
The torso. I'm not a floor ab guy either. We don't do a ton of that stuff, but I'm watching this guy, and I mean, it's 50% of his training is torso, and my girls are not strong. So that's something that I implemented right away, and we've had a ton of success with it. The D-flex, I wasn't there a week before I started using his warm-up, and if any of these guys have ever worked with me or talked to me, I love my warm-ups. I mean, they're a big part. Well, I'm there like 2-3 days, and now I'm using his whole D-flex series, and I just threw mine in the trash.
All right, appreciate it. We've got a lot more to say. If anybody got anything, you want to call us or text us or never see us again, here's the stuff. Thank you so much.
It was a real short time. We wanted to say, we had 80 slides when we started this thing, and we cut it down to 34. I know we didn't put a lot of percentages and numbers up, but our philosophy is you guys do all the same stuff we do. We just wanted to show you how we integrate all of the knowledge that we've all gained into our actual situation. We wanted to show you that I think that we've both come to the spot in our career where it's not about ego, it's about the athletes. And we don't have to do what everybody says we have to do. We have to make our athletes prepared for the game that they play, and that's our #1 priority. So I would love if y'all would email me and tell me I suck or or anything, just some feedback so that I can learn from this opportunity we had today.
Yes, ma'am. We've got, instead of giving them all sheets, I've got a sheet that I can hand them that has their last name and their 60, 70, and 80% load for that exercise. We use a little magnet bulldog clips and clip them right on the side of the rack and put post here and guards there. I've got guard sheet and post sheet. And then with 14 kids, I know what the number is, Some of these guys are going to be at 60 or 65% or 60 kilos. And if it looks great, let's bump another 2.5 or 5. If this guy's supposed to be at 80 and it's looking horrible, let's pop down to 70 and let's get a good lift. Kind of get in the neighborhood and adjust off that.
And that's the big thing. Like we're lucky enough to have no more than 15 athletes. And I can tell you every max for every athlete that I have right now on every exercise, just because I see it every day. It's so consistently chaotic for us, though, that I think we always have a plan A and a plan B. This is what I want to do, but this is probably what I'm going to have to do.
We go without sheets a lot. I've had to throw away a lot of paper, and hippie love fest, I love trees, so I had to quit doing it. All right, that's our time. Appreciate y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much.